On Mother's Day in 2005, a man by the name of Jerry Hobbs let his 8-year-old daughter have a friend over for a sleepover. The two of them spent most of the evening outside playing, and by the time it got dark, they did not return home. Jerry Hobbs then went out in search of them himself, and by dusk the next morning found them in the woods, just outside of his house, both dead. He contacted the police immediately, who took him in as a suspect and interrogated him for hours. After 48 hours of no sleep, he confessed to the murder of both children. However, 5 years later, DNA evidence proved Jorge Torres, who killed one other woman and attacked 5 more while Hobbs was in jail, was in fact the killer of the 2 young girls. Hobbs was then exonerated. However, this leads to a very crucial question. What led to his false confession? In order to better understand why Jerry Hobbs confessed to murders that he did not commit, we have to look at something called the Reid Technique. This is an interrogation technique that has been in practice for more than 50 years. It was widely practiced by police in the past and is still used today. In fact, there are classes police officers can take to get certified in using the Reid Technique, and there are people who advocate for the technique, namely the Reid Association. I tried to get in contact with this company, but they did not call me back, and after about 4 phone calls and a coronavirus pandemic, I decided I was not going to be getting a response. However, I did talk to a police officer locally at a town called Rochester in Illinois, and he said that they were taught the Reid Technique, but they were taught it as a means of learning what not to do in interrogation. So overall, the Reid Technique does not seem to be in practice in most places, but it is still used and it is harmful. This technique was used in the interrogation of Jerry Hobbs, and in order to understand why he confessed, we need to understand what exactly the Reid interrogation technique entails. So, according to the official website, these are some of the techniques that are used. First, suspects are taken in and narrowed down until there are about 1 or 2 likely suspects that they have in custody. During these initial interviews, the police officer relies on their intuition and no accusations are made. Then a suspect is chosen. The suspect is kept in a dark room without basic resources for as long as possible. So let's revisit Jerry Hobbs. He was interrogated for over 24 hours, running on no sleep for 2 days. He was confined to one room, and officers cycled through, but what exactly happened in the room during that time? With suspects cut off from the rest of the world and most of the time denied sleep and other vital resources, the interrogation process really begins. Based, again, on the official Reid Technique website, an officer will begin by asking about personal information which can be verified as true, like name, age, where the person lives, and where they were when the crime took place. From there, an officer is allowed to get, quote, creative. They begin devising a theory in which the suspect is the criminal and present it to the suspect. Any objections are immediately shot down and even interrupted. The officer will then begin psychological coercion. They pretend to understand why the suspect would have committed the crime and add motive to the theory. For example, they might tell Jerry Hobbs, "It was hard taking care of your daughter. Did she act out a lot? She must have been difficult to deal with. I understand." From there, they might add false information. They will tell the suspect someone else witnessed them committing the crime, or that they have otherwise damning evidence. They present 2 options. Either confess and get a lighter sentence, or continue to deny it and get a harsh punishment. The officer will say things like, "You're not a bad person. I like you. I think if you confess, I can get you a lighter sentence, and we can negotiate with the courts." So, imagine, you're running on no sleep, your daughter and her friend were just murdered, and you found their bodies after a whole night of searching. The police set up a theory in which you're the killer and don't allow you to deny it. They interrogate you for hours before you can even begin to properly grieve or process the information. You seem to be doomed to prison time either way. Do you confess and take the lighter sentence? Jerry Hobbs did. Let's take a look at his confession, or at least a fragment of it, once ideas had been planted in his head by authority figures.